That was Matt Sterling. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. In this podcast, Matt picks up where he left off in part 1. He went to college in Santa Cruz.
And all my travels have still not found anywhere not that I'm looking, but I still have never found myself in a situation
San Francisco pulled him right back.
I would be happier in than here.
He lived on top of Telegraph Hill and talks about his love for North Beach and nearby Chinatown. Matt worked a few different jobs after returning, including at the Edgewood Center for Children and Families. After that, he found himself bartending at various bars owned by the Tonic Nightlife Group. And this was how he started hosting pub quizzes. Side note, Matt wrote the quiz at our first ever San Francisco Trivia Night back in September. He ends this podcast responding to our theme of We're Still Here. Here's Matt.
We never went outside of the country, but my sister was an Irish dancer, which is another very common Irish Catholic San Francisco thing. So my sister was an Irish dancer, and every year she would compete in the national competition, which took place in a different city in the country. And my family, my mom, my dad, my older siblings had grown at that point. So it was just the four of us, my mom, my dad, and my younger sister. And we would get in a minivan and drive to wherever it was and see places along the way. Okay. The competitions were always in major cities. So they were in Chicago, they were in Phoenix, New York. There was one all the way in Vancouver, but that was our way of seeing the country and seeing other big cities. Was going to wherever my sister's competition was and building a little family vacation around that.
And that's awesome. And the experience of going to and figuring out what all these other places are. But I think depending on where you're from, it can also give you perspective on that place, right?
I never got the urge to really want to be somewhere else,
right?
Which I know a lot of people do. I'm the only, out of all five of us kids, I'm the only one that's still here.
Okay.
One is in Australia, one's in Hawaii, one's in Colorado, and one is in the Sacramento area, but I'm the only one that's still in the city. I had just never got, not that I think any places are worse, but
right.
I never got the urge that was that's where I need to go. Okay. I need to be here instead of San Francisco.
Okay. Do you remember the choice of going to UC Santa Cruz? Do you remember what that was like? Were there any other candidates or?
Yeah, it came down to Boulder and Santa Cruz,
okay.
Which I obviously didn't go to Boulder, but I hear that there's a lot of similarities in just terms of personality and culture there.
I was just there, yes.
Okay. But I grew up going to the boardwalk. Also, that was a thing that happened every summer. We had family members that used to have a cabin in Boulder Creek, which is very close to Santa Cruz in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And so every year we would go to the cabin and go as kids to the boardwalk, which, seemed so much bigger in my head then than it is when I went to college. And I was like, it's so much smaller than I thought. But I grew up loving Santa Cruz, so I knew that a place of my heart and something that felt like home was already there for me, and I wanted to stay closer to home. Boulder felt too far for me, and I waited until the very last day to return your letter of intent, and I drove down there, and the campus is stunning.
Yeah,
UC Santa Cruz campus is stunning.
Yeah,
and the drive there, especially if you take Highway 1, is beautiful, and so I thought, this is a great commute.
Right.
I would this is where I want to live. And so I got to live above the beach and in the forest and down on the beach and able to get in the car and come home in about an hour and a half's time whenever I wanted to.
Awesome. You lived among the banana slugs.
I was a slug and I lived amongst them. Yeah. I still move at a sluggish pace to this day sometimes.
Random Santa Cruz question.
Yes.
Did you ever go to the forgetting the name, the crepe place that also had live music.
The crepe, yeah. I lived right around twice I lived on neighboring blocks, so you could just walk there.
Okay.
Yeah, great place.
Did you know
Great
that
place.
Great place. That Adam Bergeron, who runs the Balboa Theater, he ran that place back then.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I just went to the Balboa Theater a couple weeks ago to see they played The Craft on VHS.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We love Adam on this show, and we've had him on this show.
I'm a big fan of Balboa. I'm thrilled that
really
they made it through,
yes.
And that they're still showing like old movies on VHS. And I bought a T-shirt there, and like make sure that we support the local businesses, and
hell yeah,
happy for them.
Awesome. So, did you graduate? Did you stay 4 years, 5? How long?
I stayed more. I graduated in 5 years, and I stayed an extra year because I didn't want to leave.
Okay.
So I had essentially like what you would call like a gap year. Instead of before college, I did it after college, and I like worked lightly just enough that I had all of the bills paid and covered, and I spent like about a full year with like a surfboard attached to my beach cruiser, just like riding to the beach and surfing and like hiking, and there were still many friends that stuck around as well. So I rode that out as long as I could before I was ready to like get back. I am certainly a city kid at heart, and still am. So Santa Cruz was lovely, but after 6 years there, I was like, I need to get myself back to the city. Right.
That might, I'm again just gonna guess, but that might also be a function of age too, where you're like, oh, now
it's time to get a job.
It's that too.
I need to enter the real world.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, those are obviously, I feel like that's toward the end of formative years.
Right.
Right. There's people who definitely nomads who move around all the time, and God bless them. But yeah. So what was the decision to move back? Was it, I just feel the connection there?
Like I said, it was like a kind of gap year in which I just really like truly like chilled out and cruised around, and I wanted to come back to the city. Most of my friends from high school that had gone to college elsewhere had come back to the city, so a new version of life here with all of my friends was emerging, and everyone was entering various degrees of the workforce and beginning their adult lives. It was the first time that I had come back and lived outside of my parents' house. Oh, right. So it was my first time living on my own in the city, which was an entirely different experience as well.
What neighborhood was that?
I lived at the top of Telegraph Hill in Nob Hill. At the top of Kearney, right below Coit Tower.
Oh, wow.
Which was just the best. For my first time living alone in the city, it could not have been better. Because North Beach still is so vibrant and so lively and picturesque, truly in so many ways. And also right next to Chinatown, which I also love a lot. And so that whole area right on by Fisherman's, there's just so much going on in such a small, compact area. And to be in my mid-20s and living on my own in like an old building at the top of that hill was just the best. It was the most fun.
You said mid-20s, so this is like the late 2000s.
Yes, the late 2000s, yeah.
Was it?
I came back from Santa Cruz in 2008.
Oh, interesting year.
I think, yes.
Right before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you experience any of that? Like,
I didn't.
Okay, good.
I mean, I didn't.
You didn't have a job that you lost, or?
I didn't have a job that I lost. I worked for my friend's catering company, and so even though not a ton of people were, booking like large fancy events, people will always. I mean, and even during recession, like people will always need to eat and drink, basically. So I worked in service industry for my friend's catering company, and I didn't experience any of that. And then my entire family was always working in like civil or public service. So that didn't necessarily hit very close to home for me.
Okay. Well, I guess now that we have you back in the city, have you been here ever since?
Yeah. I've been here ever since.
Let's just
hear
the story.
And I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, I've been here ever since. I definitely get my travel bug out, but I've been here.
There's a world.
Yeah, there is a world, of course.
Some of it is
I have to remind myself of that sometimes, but I do that well enough, and in all my travels, I've still not found anywhere not that I'm looking, but I still have never found myself in a situation that I would be happier in than here.
That's noteworthy.
Yeah,
for sure.
It really is. I mean, and a tremendous amount of that has to do, like I said, with my large family. Mm-hmm. And if I were to uproot myself from not just my parents are one thing, but all of my cousins and my cousins' kids and my aunts and uncles, to have so many of us would just be detrimental for me, for like my mental and emotional health and happiness, to uproot myself from that and be far away.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you get the thing? This happens to me, and I'm a transplant.
Okay.
But I've been here for a minute. But it started happening pretty much right when I moved here in 2000. I had never lived anywhere. At that point, I had left my parents' home and been gone for about 7 years, done this and that and this and that. But San Francisco was the first place I lived where, and I love, like, I can't not travel. Mm-hmm. Like, not traveling during the pandemic was more detrimental to me than, like, not being able to go to a restaurant or whatever. Sure. Anyway, it hadn't happened until I moved here, where I would travel, and I was starting to go to, like, some amazing places, but where I would come back and I'd be like, that was a great trip, but I'm really stoked to be home.
Oh, yeah.
That never happened. Did that happen to you?
Always.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to get home. I would travel to, I made sure that I got out and saw a lot of places. And, I backpacked in Europe alone for 6 weeks after college, and saw a lot of different lifestyles and cultures and, ways that people live. And at like 4 weeks in, I was like, I got to get back to the Bay. Stat.
I imagine
not that I didn't appreciate all of that, but because this is my home.
I imagine a tether,
yeah,
like going across the U.S. and then going across the Atlantic, where it's like, right, we let you out there and then like, come on back.
Yeah, that was the first time that it became very clear that, like, this is my home, and that it really means everything to me in terms of my identity and, my happiness and what I want for myself and my life is all very much tethered to San Francisco and it being a place that truly feels like home.
I feel like, if I may, I feel like part of your identity is the places you do work, the places you did work, and obviously Pub Quiz. So let's fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
And not speed round.
No, that's okay. So going back, I came back, lived in North Beach for several years, and then I spent time working at a facility in the Sunset that serves youth who are victims of abuse, neglect, or trauma, who suffer or deal with mental illnesses or behavioral challenges, and their families as well, and serves not only the San Francisco community but the greater Bay Area.
Right.
And so I spent many years working there.
Was that Edgewood?
It is, yeah.
That's where you met our good friend Lindsay.
That's where we met Lindsay.
And I want to give Lindsay a shout out.
Please, yeah.
Because Lindsay Repko is responsible for this happening.
Yes, so. And I love her. Yeah, but I spent many years working there, and then when it was time for me to take a break and switch gears, I kind of stumbled backwards into working for Tonic Nightlife Group, which is a bar and nightlife group here in the city that has had many iterations and a number of bars over the years, and that was.
Do you want to go through all of them? Or as many as you can.
Not all of them are still open, but
that's great.
It's Tonic Nightlife Group because it started with Tonic,
right,
which originally was at Polk and Union, before moving just nearby to us down into the Tenderloin, which is now another bar, but they still currently have Soda Pop, which is where we are now, and Teeth over in the Mission.
Originally Dr. Teeth.
Originally Dr. Teeth.
They got a
in
cease
honor
and
of the
desist
Muppets.
from the Muppets.
I believe. I
Yeah,
think
they did.
I
They did.
think that's safe to assume.
And I
There's
think
no
that's
Muppet memorabilia inside, but yeah, that is what it began as, Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem,
Right.
which is the Muppets house band. And then over the years, they've had Wild Hair, and I started with them at Lightning Tavern, which was on Union in the Marina.
Okay.
And yeah, there have been several others in many incarnations, but that was another new phase of life in San Francisco, being the only non-transplant. The owners are from the East Coast. Pretty much everyone else that came to work for them were like young people that had just moved to the Bay and had been working in the service industry or wanted to get into the service industry to get to know the city. And so I would always have people ask, like, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from here. I'm like, no, you're
down
not.
the street.
Like, no, I am. Like,
Yeah.
we feel like we never meet people from the city. You're like a unicorn.
Which
Which is always funny because I tell them, that's all the people that I know are still city people. So it's almost as if there's almost two different cities.
Yeah.
It's the people that have been here forever and then who like the transplants don't really see or like interact with as much or don't know. But I was always shocked at people that would be surprised that there was someone who was a local that was, still slinging drinks in the bar.
And that name, Unicorn. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We're not rare.
Right.
Just live and you'll find us.
Yeah. Anywhere you go, you'll find people that. Yeah.
They were probably stoked to have you, though.
It was great. I mean, I really enjoyed it. And it was just another phase, like I was saying, from my friends in college of introducing people to the city. I always loved to take people out and on hikes and to all these different places and say, we rolled a keg all the way up Mount Davidson when I was a youth, because really there's everywhere that you go, there's something to appreciate.
And for you, stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they continue to come out because that's when I was in high school. At least I was one of the first people in my class to get my driver's license. And I really wasn't a big drinker in high school. So I would just drive. Like I put my pedal to the metal and drove head first into popularity because I would just drive people from parties and hangouts, and they were always in beautiful locations, like at the top of Mount Davidson overlooking the city, or at the Palace of Fine Arts, or in Golden Gate Park, or Stowe Lake, or all of these great, Lake Merced, all these great spots that are just, in your backyard as you're growing up, but until you see other people enjoying them and appreciating them for the first time, it's a different experience.
It's different. I'm not going to beat this to death, but I'm a transplant, and to me, things like going to Alcatraz, going to the park, going to Palace of Fine Arts, there's a list. Yeah. And they never get old. I'm like, even the most touristy of the tourist things, there's parts of Fisherman's Wharf where I'm like, get me out of here. But but so I can't imagine for someone who like you has been here.
Yeah, I mean, I still want to go ice skating at Union Square.
Awesome.
Even though it can be a nightmare with all of, like you said, all the tourists and all the shoppers and whatnot. Those are still things that I really like to do.
Are they going to do the ice rink this year?
I don't know.
They did one, I feel like, at City Hall
last
year.
I think that I heard that they might be putting it up already.
There's going to be an ice rink
There's a smaller
somewhere.
one at City Hall, I know that. But I think that I would assume they'd bring it back, but not sure.
Yeah, okay. So you're working for the Tonic Group. You're bartending at different bars?
Yeah, I'm bartending at different bars that they've got around the city.
Okay.
And just hopping around the city. I also hosting a weekly trivia night for them, which has been rather successful.
Where did that start?
That started at Tonic, and I inherited that from a good friend now, but he at the time was the owner's brother, who was also a comedian, and he moved to LA to pursue his career in that, and they needed a trivia host, and They were like, "You're just about as sassy as he is. Like, I think this might work."
So they picked you. It wasn't a volunteer thing. Like they're
No,
like,
they
"You
asked
should
if
do
I
this?"
would be interested, and
Yeah.
I said no because I didn't feel comfortable speaking really in front of,
Stranger.
groups.
Yeah.
And they kind of coaxed me into it, and I started out really nervous. And like not really knowing how to control a crowd, especially inside of a bar.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing it for 7 years now. About.
Do you want to talk about the first time you did it? Or
Yeah.
or if that's when you overcame the fear by just doing it, or
I had a lot of support behind me. So I was already working for the company and had many friends that were like, "You can do this. Just be yourself. But we're going to shove a microphone in front of you." And like a bunch of people inside a bar. And I was super nervous. And my friend took me out for like a couple drinks beforehand to, coax the nerves.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky because I'd already been working there. So a lot of the trivia regulars were there and knew me, but I didn't really know much about, I'd never gone to a trivia night before. I didn't know what a thing it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's, people that show up every week and bring their friends and get super competitive and have a lot of fun. But I wasn't familiar with like how to run that or how to structure that. And
did you write the questions at the time? Okay.
And specifically because the guys at Tonic, they didn't want it to be one of the ones where we just get the questions from somewhere else. Like I know there's groups that do that, but they were like, we want your personality to be we want it to be built around that. We want people that want to come to see you and have fun with you and laugh with you. So and the last host gave me a structure, but I went from having to spend hours and hours and hours like trying to come up with questions to now getting it all done years later in like an hour's time tops.
Wow.
But it was really, really fun. Like the trivia scene it's really fun.
Was it from that first time of just...
Yeah, I still wasn't comfortable yet. It took a while. Because his name is Casey Lai. He's a comedian based in LA, but he comes up here too. He was so good and still is at what he does. But I was not a comedian. I was not someone who like was super comfortable, even though I'm definitely a social person, was not really comfortable speaking in front of, strangers. Mm-hmm. And so it was a lot to inherit. But all it really took, like anything, is just practice and not giving up. When
just doing it.
Yeah. Anytime you feel like I can't do this or I don't want to do this, like oftentimes that's something that is worth exploring.
Yeah.
And so if you kind of push past all of that, you get somewhere. Can get somewhere, comfortable and successful. And it has grown quite a bit over the years. And we moved it from Tonic to, at one point I was doing it for Tonic, Soda Pop, and Dr. Teeth, so I would do 3 nights a week.
Okay.
With 3 entirely different crowds. Yeah. And now it's just down to Soda Pop.
When did it start for you?
For me, it started, I think I'm coming up on 7 years.
2014.
Yeah.
Or so.
Around. I can't be positive, but...
The point is you did it for a number of years and you were grooving and enjoying it, and then the pandemic happened.
Right. The pandemic happened and it went virtual, if you can believe that.
Awesome.
Good, and still is to a certain extent. So I started doing trivia virtually for various companies who would be doing, normally if it weren't a pandemic, would be doing an offsite or a team building activity, but obviously couldn't get together. So... with the help of a really cool company called Marco Experiences, who one of the founders of that company was a previous trivia regular of mine. And he was like, "Hey, buddy, we're looking for a trivia host to create this experience for teams across the country and even overseas." I've done a couple international ones, if you can believe that. And so we lickety-split figured out how to do it over Zoom with breakout rooms and screen shares and all that stuff, and that's still going. So we've got it here. It's called Tonic Trivia with Matt Sterling, but it also is going out to people all over the country.
Okay, and I just have to say for our listeners, some of whom might have been at our first pub quiz night back in September, which seems about like 17 years ago or so.
Yeah. I was a youth.
Is that this is why, and thanks also to our mutual friend Lindsay for connecting us, but this is why, if we're going to do this, we wanted you to write the questions. And ultimately, we wanted you to host. It doesn't matter that it didn't work out. It will in the future.
Yeah. Oh,
It will
make
in
it
the
work
future.
in
It'll
another
happen.
iteration.
But yeah, and also not having ever attended any of your pub quiz. I'm familiar with pub quiz, but now I really want to go.
Yeah. It's a doozy. It's we moved them to Thursday nights because it was it originally was on Tuesdays, which was very successful in its own right. But we've got a really good groove now on a Thursday night where people
Here.
Yeah, and it's a party. It's really not. It certainly is challenging and competitive, but the point is we also want people to just have fun and like not feel like, they're not up on current events or they don't remember like any general knowledge from elementary school. Like it's not meant to frustrate anybody. It's supposed to be a boozy, casual fun.
An excuse, a different type of flavor of fun.
Almost the end of even a different type of flavor of like pub night, or pub quiz night.
Did you see the news that I saw recently that LeVar Burton has been signed to host a Trivial Pursuit show?
No, but good for him. I did enjoy his time on Jeopardy. Yeah. But that's where, a lot of I grew up watching Jeopardy with my dad. And so even though it was difficult for me to figure out like how to get my own little lane within trivia, I was like, well, I grew up watching quiz shows, so
You're adjacent.
I'm quiz adjacent, show adjacent.
Yeah.
So, but we have over many years built it up into, like a super fun, lighthearted, the booze is flowing and people are having a good time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, what I would like to end with, if it's okay with you, is our theme this season is We're Still Here.
Okay.
How do you respond as someone who is effectively never left to still being here? We've talked about it a lot, but
yeah. I'm grateful, first and foremost. I had seen a lot of the city change pre-pandemic, with, as many people know, with Google, Facebook, tech, the big tech boom, people being priced out of the city, a lot of them natives, a lot of them like lifetime locals. So the city has been in flux and changing for many years before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic happened, shit really shut down. And it shut down everywhere, but I was surprised at how many people that I know and love left, how many businesses closed that I also have loved. And that is a really sad and unfortunate thing that many people had no control over. And so to be coming out of it, and San Francisco was tight. The restrictions were early and tight for a long time. So this is right around now is about the first, we're really starting to see it coming back to life as much as it has since pre-pandemic, which is a great thing to see people patronizing businesses again, especially small and local businesses that were able to make it through. But what it means to me to still be here is just gratitude for those that were able to stay, and not only for financial reasons, but did what needed to be done to keep their mental and emotional health intact to the best of their ability, and to be able to celebrate us as people and businesses as well, and the city itself, and as a culture to still be here and to be coming out of it with hopefully a brighter future and a better appreciation and respect for community. It's often hard. I think people find a really difficult time, especially if they're transplants, finding a feeling of community in a big metropolitan city. But that certainly is there, especially here where you can turn a corner and be in an entirely different neighborhood with a totally different feel. San Francisco definitely is a place of community for many people, and it is there. So it is there. It is still here. And my hope is that those that are still here are able to breathe a new life back into the city.
That was Matt Sterling. On the next Storied San Francisco, get to know musician Kitten on the keys. Episode 30 drops next Tuesday, wherever you listen to podcasts. Music for the podcast was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Original photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 4th season, we have more than 160 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can, please rate and review our show so we can reach even more folks. We love email. Drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, stay healthy, keep dreaming, and we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.